What's your name?
Elise.
How old are you?
3.
Who's your brother?
Trenton.
Oh, that's her cousin.
Oh.
This is her brother.
Do you have a sister?
No.
Do you have a mama?
Yeah.
What's her name?
Mommy.
Oh. Do you have a grandfather? A granddad?
Who's your papa?
What's his name?
Papa's name?
Cyprian.
Cyprian.
This is Colin, my cousin.
What is your name?
Colin.
Well, how old are you?
9.
And what school do you go to?
Little Creek Elementary.
And what do you like to study?
Science.
Science? What kind of science? Earth science, chemistry, the rocks, the weather.
What do y'all learn about science?
Natural resources.
Oh, okay. Cool. Wave to the camera.
Bye.
In the 4th grade.
I am in 5th grade. Got it?
What is life in the 5th grade like?
Cool. Not much homework, surprisingly. Good. We get to go on 3 field trips this year. Last year in elementary school. And we have a graduation party at the end of the year. It's good.
Let's take a long break. The first time you met my uncle.
I met him when I was in high school and grade school, but I didn't know him then. But I always thought he was a handsome guy, very quiet. But I never looked this way. I played hard to get. No, and he did too. But then I met him when I was almost graduating. I was introduced by my nephew, who is no longer here. And then we married in December of '48 by a judge, and then in January of '49 we married through the Catholic Church. We're married 48 years when he passed away, and he always talked about having an anniversary after 50 years, but he never made it. He always loved his children, his grandchildren, and family. He really believed in education, which, you know, we passed on to our children, and we love all the Contrerases.
Were you talking to him when he went off to the war?
No, it was after the war that I actually got acquainted with him, because he came back and finished high school to get his degree. Then he went on to the University of Houston and studied mechanical engineering. He always liked mechanics, and he graduated in the summer of 1954, and by then we were already married, and I was expecting my 5th child, who was Mariette, and we lived happily ever after.
What was his father like when you first met him?
He was very nice. He had a nickname for all of these grandkids. I don't remember them all, but he always was glad to see his children and grandkids. So it was a lot of fun. You know, a lot of history over. We called Frances Granny, but she was like a saint. She was such a good person. You never heard Granny criticize anybody. She was just a very, very good person. And as poor as they were, if you went to their house, she always had something, if it was coffee or toast or whatever, to give you. She was a very, very good person. And we miss her, and we'll never forget her. And Florence, of course. He was good too, but you know, Granny was the one that was a saint. She was just beautiful person. They both had their own personality, but we loved them both. They were the best people that ever were in my life. Probably I was closer to them than to my own mom, to be honest with you. But I love all the Contrerases, and it was so great to see all of them here last night and today.
Thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome. We
I appreciate it.
love all of you.
Tell us a little what do you remember about your grandfather?
Well, as you know, we lived next door to my grandpa on State Street. They lived at 2009. We lived at 2011. We lived in a 2-story house, and we moved in there when I was fairly young, probably about 3 or 4 years old. And I remember him having the blacksmith shop, and he invited us to go down there and see the blacksmith shop. But my mom was kind of reluctant on going because, you know, when you're out there in the blacksmith shop, he dealt with coals, and, you know, he had the fanning to fan the coals, and he had a lot of that carbon and soot. And I'd come back home and I was covered in black charcoal. So my mom had a little problem with me going down there and getting all dirty. But I recall him being a big man until he started having some health problems, and then the next thing I knew, you know, he had diabetes and he lost one of his legs. But I have some vivid memories of him because I used to play checkers with him, and that was his favorite pastime. And we would sit in the front porch, and I'd bring my checkers out, and we'd play a game of checkers. And I noticed that I would win, and I felt a little guilty because I'd win the games all the time. So I'd like to make him feel good, so occasionally I'd let him win. You know, it didn't make him feel good. But he was a real good-natured, you know, man, and he would like to tell stories about, you know, his experiences in Mexico. And what I recall is that, you know, he came over as a small youngster, probably in his early teens, and he used to work in a circus as a clown, and he'd put up the tents and so forth. And after he lost his leg, you know, he's tried to stay active, and since he used to be a blacksmith, he used to like to do a lot of his own inventions, and he'd invent his own tools. And I recall he would even make his own drill press, and he was very good about improvising. So he would use whatever implements he had and kind of like rig up his own drill press, you know. But I was always very impressed, and I guess being around him was a big experience. And he was a very good-natured man, and he would also like to pick up aluminum cans, because I guess the price of aluminum was going up in those days. So I remember I used to go walking with him. Of course, he'd have his crutches, and we'd go around the neighborhood picking up aluminum cans, and then of course I guess he would find a source to go sell them. But growing up in that era, like I said, this was back in the early 50s, and I recall probably around 52, 53, and growing up as a teenager. Also, my grandmother, I remember her being in the kitchen all the time, and she'd always have a little cup of coffee. And I remember I always used to go in and ask her, says, "Granny, you got anything?" Because I knew that she always had snacks. And she always kept snacks, cookies or something that we would share with a glass of milk. And occasionally I'd go run errands for her, go to the grocery store. And there was a grocery store not too far around the corner. It's called State Street Grocery, right there on the corner of State Street and Henderson. And she'd give me a quarter tip to go run errands for her to the grocery store. And I recall that as soon as I saved up enough money, I would always get me a Great Pet soda and a Crypex coconut pie. That was my favorite, and that was my reward for, you know, going to the grocery store, and she'd give me a list of what she needed. In those days, they didn't have supermarkets, you know, so they had to rely on neighborhood groceries. And there was quite a few around. There was another one down the street called Scardino's, but that was about 2 blocks from the house. But I do have some vivid, memories, and I stayed there till I was a teenager, till I was around 14, because I used to go to St. Joseph Catholic School, parochial school, and I'd walk to school and back. But those were probably one of my fondest memories that I recall living there on State Street growing up.
And when did you join the force?
Excuse me?
When did you join the force?
I joined in 1963. At that time I was married and had 2 daughters, and my 3rd daughter, Debbie, was on the way. In fact, she was born on September the 4th, and I graduated from the Police Academy on September the 5th of '63. So she was born the day before I graduated from the Police Academy, and I stayed there till January of '85, and I was promoted to detective in October of 1970, and I remained as a detective in burglary and theft till I retired in 1985.
And what did you do afterwards?
Well, I said, I always wanted to be in private business. That was my ambition, is to have my own company. So we formed a security company, and my brother Robert and myself initiated the company. And I did that for about 2 years before I retired, and we got the business going until I finally retired and had a full-time business. But it was a very successful business. We had it for about 22 years. We ran about 70 full-time security officers. We did security for banks, shopping centers, commercial. But we did all aspects of security, including private investigations. And we also had our own private security training school. And I was an instructor, and we commissioned our own officers. But I felt like I had a very, very unique, background growing up, and until I retired. Now I'm enjoying kind of like the life of Riley. I work when I want to work. I'm a substitute teacher with the Brenham Independent School District, and I enjoy, being around kids, and being in the police department. I kind of always had a knack of, getting kids on the right track, and especially now in this society and this, day and age, kids are exposed to a lot of different things, and so it's been an experience, and I enjoy what I'm doing.
All right, well, thank you.
All right, you're welcome.
So Jimmy, talk a little about your grandfather. What are some of the memories you have of him?
I think one of the biggest memories I have of Grandpa is that he was such an active individual, and he had lost his leg to gangrene due to diabetes. And I remember when I was a boy, I'd go over there, I always asked my dad, I go, Dad, and Grandpa would tear the porch up and put it back together. It was a wood porch, and it was wood boards, like 2x6s or whatever. And Grandpa would go out there, if he didn't have nothing to do, he'd take the boards up, take the whole porch off, and then go back and flip them over and put the boards back down again. He did that he probably did that once a month. I remember that distinctly. And then I remember when he got sick, and he got sick towards the time before he passed away. I think I remember this distinctly because whenever I'd come over there, he'd always swing his crutch at me. He was on crutches. He'd always swing his crutch at me because we'd be coming up the stairs, and he'd say, get out of here, get out of here. And he'd swing his crutch at me. I'd go back and ask my dad. I said, Dad, why is Grandpa so damn mean? He'd go, I didn't say damn, of course, but, and he said, well, he said, your grandfather's got a way about him. But towards the end, when I think he knew, this is my opinion, because I was around him a lot, because we lived down the road from him, that he was, when he was getting ready to pass away, he became a lot more gentler, I guess more I guess, at peace with himself, because I mean, I'm sure being sick the way he was and not having a leg kind of angered him a little bit, because I always heard that he was an active kind of guy. My whole life, from the time I was born to the time he passed away, I always knew him with just one leg and on crutches. So, but he was when we'd have a conversation, he would just ask, "How you doing? How's your father?" Blah blah, just the basic stuff. And I guess the one thing I have to say about Grandpa was that he never was, I guess, what's the word? How do I want to put this? Because we as grandfathers today are different. He wasn't real demonstrative. He wasn't real loving, you know. You just knew he loved you. And you were his grandson, and I was one of his one of his son's oldest children. So, but I guess that's about it, really. I mean, and he was. I did not realize what kind of person he was till after I got older, and you don't really realize that until you become a man, you have a family of your own. That what his accomplishments were, you know. Even though, I mean, coming from Mexico as a boy, and really accomplishing what he did. I mean, having 9 kids and having a business and being influential in what he did, being one of the first Mexicans to do that kind of stuff, and then we now have the privilege of being Mexican Americans thanks to him, you know, coming here. But other than that, he was just my grandpa, you know. And unfortunately, I lost him very young. I lost him when I was 10 years old. So other than that, he's a great guy. He gave me a lot of history, and I'm glad we did this family reunion. That's about all I can say, brother. I mean,
what did your father learn from him? What did you think your father learned from him?
My dad?
Yes, sir.
My father taught me what the meaning of being a man was, what the meaning of being responsible, to take care of your responsibilities. That he always tried to guide me in the right direction. Not that I always listened to him, unfortunately, like most children do. But from my dad, I learned to be a man, to be responsible, to look at my responsibilities, to make sure that my family was always taken care of. And that's the one thing I remember about Dad. My father used to work 2 or 3 jobs so we could have a house and have things. And my sister, my baby sister Tessa, has cerebral palsy, so she was quite expensive in the process of raising her. Dad, she had to have braces and special doctors, and my father always made sure she took care of it. I mean, he worked for the post office during the day and come home at night, eat. In the afternoon, he would eat. He'd go to work at 5 and get off at 2, and he'd come home and eat lunch, supper, or eat an early dinner, and then he'd leave again. He either worked for Grant's or Bain Electric or Sears, and he was a TV repairman, and that's what he did for a second job. And he'd work till 9, 10 o'clock every night, 6 days a week. The only time we took off was Sunday. We went to church went to mass on Sundays, and then we either went to the movies or went to Prince's Hamburgers during the summertime and got root beer and hamburgers, or we just went to the park, or we went to Granny's house, went to my grandpa and grandma's house. But my father was a good role model for all of us. I think all my uncles and my dad were great role models. They taught us a lot. They were the greatest generation alive, because that's where they came from. 5 of them served in the military, including your grandfather, and they all served their country, and they all with distinction. So I think they left us a great legacy for me, for you, and for our grandchildren and my grandchildren. So, but other than that, he was a good guy. I miss him, unfortunately.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
So, talk a little bit. Why did you get involved in LULAC, and what drew you there?
Well, we were really recruited by our uncle, Ernest Aguilla, and of course he's always been civic-minded, especially coming from World War II. He wanted to make sure that the Latinos or Mexican Americans, or whatever we were called at the time, or being called, would be able to assimilate within the American community. And so his objective was to make sure that we became good citizens, and also that we learned English properly, that we knew about the political system, that we knew how to articulate our thoughts and our issues in a way so that we can actually be part of the solution to the problems of our country. And of course he wanted us to contribute to our country and to give a lot of ourselves to the country.
And when you joined the Army right after high school?
No, what I did, I joined went to University of Houston. and I graduated. I was lucky enough to join a co-op program that allowed me to work at a company, Houston Lighting and Power, and go to school every other semester. And then at the time of my graduation, I was inducted. I had to take my physical induction, passed, and I found a reserve unit, and that's how I served in the military in the Air Force, U.S. Air Force Reserves.
And how many years did you serve?
Well, active duty was very minimal. It was like probably 6 months, and then I was on active reserve for 6 years.
What did you do after that?
Pardon?
What did you do after that?
Well, I had a job with HL&P to begin with. When I graduated in 1972, I was a chemist, and I had a lab job. And when I got back, I entered grad school, and I was promoted as a lab supervisor. And I was a lab supervisor till 1987 when I went into the law department. I had gotten a law degree in 1981, passed the bar in 1982, and finally got into the law department, and then transferred into the environmental department in 1990, where I've been until now. And so far I've been in Houston Lighting and Power Centerpoint for about 40 years.
What do you remember about Frances Contreras, your grandma?
Well, I was, when I was, my remembrance, she was already old. And so a lot of the interaction, because she spoke Spanish and I spoke mostly English, there wasn't that real close connection there. However, we did visit every weekend, and but I do know that since we were going to parochial school, the month of May was important for the crowning of the Virgin Mary, and she provided us with flowers. So she would have a garden, and we'd go over there and pick roses or whatever flowers that were blooming at the time, and we would use it to form a crown for the May ceremonies for the Blessed Mary Virgin.
And what do you remember about Grandpa?
Was the fact that he played the violin all the time. When we would go over to my aunt's house, or his house really, to take piano lessons, he would be on the rocker playing the violin, and he would always show us things. And one of the things he did teach me at an early age was how to tie a tie. So when I got into high school and I was in the debate team, I was the only one that knew how to tie a tie, and I would tie everybody else's tie before going into debate competition. So that's basically one of the fondest memories I have about it.
Okay, perfect. So tell me, what did you learn from your father?
Well, the best thing I learned from my father, I can honestly say, is working hard to get where you're going to be in your life, always doing the right thing, and taking the responsibility for any actions that have ever been incurred by yourself or might be your fault. And that's basically what I learned from my father. That and generosity. My father was one of the most generous people that I can even think of. He helped, always willing to help others, including his family. Well, his family especially, but also others that were outside the family. And that is something I will never forget. And it's something that I try and follow up on today. And even as I'm getting older, I still always try and remember these things.
Now, his father, your grandfather, and all of his brothers were that first generation.
Right.
They go to the war. A lot of them went to college. What did you learn from them?
Once again, my father and his brothers were people that had definite goals in their life. They also were a fun-loving group. I must admit, they worked hard and they liked to play hard, and that's one of the things that they taught me in particular, is that you can't ever take your job serious enough to where it's going to impact on your life and your family's life, and not be a part of something good within your life. My parents, or my dad and his uncles and my uncles that did go to war, taught me that freedom in this country is a responsibility, especially if you're in a minority position. You have to work harder sometimes, and for that reason, I can say me and my two other brothers were in the service. We did our thing, but we followed along the same example that my dad did, as well as his brothers, and very glad that we followed in that route.
Thank you. State your name and state who you are the daughter of.
Okay. My name is Dianis Guerrero. I am Nick and Hortense's daughter. I was named after Aunt Dianis. I'm not sure who thought of the name Donnie, but in the family I'm known as Donnie. And what I remember, memories that I have of Grandma and Grandpa, we all the families lived very close in the neighborhood, and I remember getting together on Sundays. I mean, going to church, and then after church going over to Granny and Grandpa's, and Granny would always have a big pot of beans and rice and tortillas. So everybody went to Granny's after church and had plenty of food. And I also used to go stay with them on weekends because I went to a church that was near there, St. Joseph's, and I sang in the choir. And Dad would, after we moved away, Dad would bring me for the weekend. So I'd stay with them for the weekend, go to church Sunday morning and sing, and then the afternoon Dad and Mom and Adele would come and visit and then take me back home. So I spent a lot of time with my grandparents. I remember Grandpa, when my clearest memories of him, he had already lost a leg, and he walked with crutches, and he was good with those crutches. I mean, he could go fast from one end of the house to the other. When I was little, he loved for me to brush his hair, and I would spend a lot of time brushing his hair, and also he liked me to powder. He would take a bath and then he liked to be powdered, so I would powder his face, his neck. He was like white as a ghost, and so that was our little routine. When I was there, I would brush his hair and powder his face and his hair and everything. Also playing checkers. He loved to play checkers. I think he played checkers with all the grandkids, and occasionally he would let me win, but he had a blast. I mean, he would get thrilled when he beat me, which was quite often. I remember we had a piano, and Aunt Della taught all of the grandkids piano, and Grandpa thought he could play the piano. But what he would do, he'd turn his hearing aid off, and then he'd call any kids that were there, come sit down in the living room and listen to his new song that he composed. And so he would get on there and just bang the heck out of the piano, but he wasn't playing anything, no melody, and we were like hysterical, laughing. But then we try to compose ourselves because he'd turn around and look at us to see, well, how am I doing? Oh, you're doing great, Grandpa. That is a nice song.
What did you learn from Uncle Nick? Uncle Nick was one of that generation went to the war with my grandfather, and he came back and went to school. What did you learn from him?
Oh, what didn't I learn from Dad? As far as you mean the war?
Everything. Learn from him as a person.
Well, Dad was a very generous person. He was very... Can you turn that on for a second?
Okay. So, what did you learn from your father?
I learned patience, generosity, love of family. He was so devoted to Granny. I think all of the brothers were. I mean, they really loved their mom. Of course, they loved their dad, but there was, I think, a special closeness, a special bond with all the family and Granny. I mean, I don't think there was a Sunday unless Dad was sick that he didn't go visit his mom. So the family was very important to him. Dad was just fun to be around. He loved to play the piano, and he could really play. So, anytime we were around, he would say, "Oh, I've got to play this new piece for you." And it was usually a piece I'd heard at least 100 times, but he played it well. I mean, he loved jazz, and he loved boxing. I think he boxed when he was in the Marines. And Dad wasn't afraid of anybody. He felt like he could take care of himself. And he always had like a tire wrench or something in the car, and I'd say, Dad, you know, if something happens, if you get attacked and you try to use that, they're going to use it on you. But it didn't bother him. I mean, he was fearless. Dad was just a great person. Both of my parents were very loving and very generous people.
And what did you learn from your mother?
Very giving. She made people always feel welcome. I've heard lots of people in the family say, you know, your mom, anytime we went to visit, we always just felt welcome. And she always was saying, you know, come and visit, bring the kids. She says, not too many people wanted like 6 or 7 kids in their house, right? But, you know, Mom was very, you know, very generous and very loving to people. And she just enjoyed life, laughed all the time. And as a matter of fact, when I laugh, sometimes I can hear my mom's laughter. You know, I laugh very similar to her. And like Mom and Dad's family were totally opposite. Dad's family was like more reserved, but you know, very loving. And Mom's family was very loud and boisterous. And they were the type when they all lived in different parts of the country, and when they visit each other, the brothers and the sisters, it was a lot of crying and hugging and laughing and loud. And then when they were leaving, it was a lot of crying and hugging and laughing and being loud. You know? And Dad would go, oh my God. Because he wasn't used to, you know, Contrerases are just more quiet and more reserved. You know? So there was like 2 extremes.
And they had that store, didn't they? They had a little store.
Mom had a little store right there of the last years of her life. She had a little building that she put right there on the property, and she loved that. She really had a lot of fun with that.
It was kind of like they had toys, all kinds of things.
All kinds of stuff, yeah. And Granny, when I think about Granny, I think about, I very seldom, in all the years growing up, I very seldom saw her eat. She was always cooking, washing clothes, hanging clothes out. She would always have toast and coffee. So I'd see her have toast and coffee for breakfast and toast and coffee for lunch. I always saw her eating toast and coffee, but I didn't ever see her sit down because she was so busy cooking and serving. Maybe she had little snacks in between or something. Not until she got much, much older that one time I realized actually Granny was sitting down with a plate of food, eating. I mean, that was a shock to me. But she was like probably in her 70s, late 70s or maybe early 80s, and she was still washing, using a scrub board. She would wash Aunt Della and everybody's clothes, and hanging out clothes and washing dishes and cooking. I mean, she never stopped. Very quiet, always smiling, always happy, didn't talk a whole lot. And I'm kind of sorry I didn't get into more conversation about our history and our heritage, you know, and of course I regret that now, but Aunt Della and Aunt Diana's, they were a lot of fun.
You were named after Aunt Della.
I was actually named after Aunt Diana's, and Adele, my sister, was named after Aunt. We called her Della, but actually her name was Adela.
And what did you learn from Aunt Diana's?
Never a dull moment with Aunt Diana's. She loved to talk. She knew what was going on in the family with everybody. If you wanted to get the lowdown on anybody, just ask Aunt Diana. Well, how's Aunt Beatrice doing? Or how is this doing? Or how's Superman doing? Or how is, you know, Junior doing? She knew what was going on with everybody because everybody visited them all the time, and so they would tell them what was going on in their life. So that's how we knew what was going on with all the family once we, you know, got older. She loved to knit, and she was very generous. She always had to knit something to give to her nieces and nephews. She loved her nieces and nephews, and she would knit all year long so that she would have something for everybody at Christmas time. So anytime you would go there, she would take out what she was doing, and this is going to be for Millie, and this is going to be for so-and-so, and this is, oh my God, you must spend your whole time knitting. So yeah, very, very religious. religious, very spiritual.